Chapter 8, Lesson 7, Slope-Intercept Form. Alright, so slope-intercept form is just a special way of writing an equation where m equals slope and b equals y-intercept. The equation of the line in slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And like we just said, the m is the slope and the b is the y-intercept. Okay, so example, if I looked at y equals 1/4 x minus 6, I would say, okay, the slope equals 1/4 and the y-intercept equals -6. And we'll talk about how we graph those in just a minute. Okay, now sometimes our equation may not be in slope-intercept form. So what I need to do is get that y by itself so that I have y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to add 4x to both sides. I'm going to add 4x, so that gets rid of this. And I have left y equals. Now since I want to get it in slope-intercept form, so I want mx plus b on this side, I'm going to be careful about the order I put it in. So I'm going to put this positive 4x first, and then I'm going to put, this is a positive 2, so plus 2. So my slope equals 4, and my y-intercept equals 2. Now let's look at what we do with that. Now to graph a line using slope-intercept form, the first thing we want to do is obviously be sure it is in slope-intercept form. And if it is, then we want to find the slope and the y-intercept. So we want to figure out what those two things are. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to graph the y-intercept. So that's going to be right on the y-axis. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to count the slope from the y-intercept. We'll do an example in just a minute. And then the last thing we're going to do is draw the line. Okay, so let's look what that means. Now, before we try to graph it, we do want to talk about counting the slope. If our slope is a positive slope, so if I look at an example and it says like 2x plus 3, okay, my slope is 2. So two ways that I can count that slope is 2 over 1, because that makes a positive 2, or I can also count it as -2 over -1, because that also makes a positive 2 slope. If my slope is negative, so for example, y equals -2x, so my slope equals -2, there's two ways I can count it. -2 over +1, or +2 over -1. And that's going to be very important as we do some examples. So let's look at this first example. Y equals -2x, 2/3 x minus 1. So first thing, make sure it's in y slope-intercept form. And it is. Y equals mx plus b. Now I want to figure out, okay, my slope is -2/3. And my y-intercept is -1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot that point at -1 on my y-axis. And then I'm going to count my slope. Now it's a negative slope, so I can either count it as -2 over 3 or 2 over -3. I'll count it both ways just to show you. So let's do this first one, -2 over 3. So I'm going to rise -2. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go down 2, and then I'm going to run 3. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to put my point there. Okay, now if I did it the opposite way, I could count 2 over -3. So again, I start at my y-intercept, and I can rise 2 and run -3. So 1, 2, 3 to the left, and I could put my point right there. Now either way, when I draw my line, I can see that I did it correct both ways. And there's my line that represents this equation.